Welcome to another episode of AutoTech Effect 2020. I'm joined today by Keith Mahoney, CEO of ReImagined, Inc. Welcome, Keith.
Thanks, Mike.
Keith, tell us about ReImagined and how it all began and what's the origin story of ReImagined?
Well, oddly enough, it's been a long time coming for the company. We have my partner, Rob Hare, is our president, and it's been a quest he's been on for many, many years to look at the structure, reinsurance structures in general, especially focusing on the offshore reinsurance, and take a look at where the industry is in all likelihood heading over the next 5-10 years and from there. And what Rob sought to do was build structures that I think could compete effectively against all offshore reinsurance structures, with the idea that in the future there'll be no more need for offshore reinsurance. And that's what Rob effectively built, and together we brought that to market.
Great. One of the things that I was very intrigued to learn more about ReImagined, it's such an innovative approach to participation. If a dealer is looking for a modern approach, tax efficient, maximization of underwriting profit and control cost, this is the first structure that I've seen that ticks all those boxes. So tell us more, just kind of generally what your program is and does compared to the traditional offshore 831Bs.
Sure. Well, what ReImagined has brought, really ideally seeking partners who are innovative in their approach, who are visionary strategically in the market, are two structures, effectively. One is designed, it looks kind of like a traditional dealer-owned warranty corp that you take a look at, but what it's done effectively is utilize different methods. Instead of traditional reinsurance, there are some things that we've brought to market through partnership, through some of the state divisions of insurance, that allows us to utilize risk transfer as opposed to traditional reinsurance. And what that does, if you were to look at what a traditional dealer looks at a DOWC for and thinks tax efficiency, for example, or investment return, what this does is it takes a traditional tax deferral period from 5 to 7 years traditionally and extends it potentially to 20 to 25 years plus, depending on variables, size of the dealer, growth goals, because again, a dealer-owned warranty corp is a bet on the future. It's a bet on the economy. It's a bet on growth. So that structure has been very well received by larger dealer groups. Think anywhere 500 plus service contracts a month as an example. The other structure we brought, we call a hybrid model program. And what the hybrid model program does is it looks at, think about a CFC, the 831B that you mentioned before. It's a certain size of dealer volume-wise. And essentially what these guys look at is tax efficiency. So what the hybrid model program does is it combines the best of a traditional DOWC and a CFC. It combines the two, allowing for competition really against both.
Oh, wow.
And what it's meant to do is eliminate, we'll talk a little bit, I'm sure, about transparency in the market, things of that nature. And what it does is it eliminates a lot of what has been accepted as fees for many, many years in our space that dealers pay because they feel like they have to. They always have. When you take it from traditional reinsurance to what we have done, bringing all these companies and businesses back onshore, it eliminates those fees for dealers.
You mentioned a very important topic. You said bringing these structures back onshore. One of the things that I know in presenting reinsurance that agents and dealer service professionals get all the time is, how do they overcome the perception of being offshore?
Right.
One of the things that we've always been able to rely on is the ability to say, we're a 953D election U.S. taxpayer, and that kind of, satisfies usually that question. But more and more, the perception of being offshore has been a big challenge to overcome. So tell us more about being onshore.
It's interesting. I was in a platform discussion, call it 2 years ago. There were agents in the room, there were dealers in the room, and they were asking questions that couldn't get answers to. Why am I offshore? Do I have to be? And what's the IRS going to do? And I found myself frustrated because I feel that for too many years it's been a wait-and-see approach, which is easy for outsiders to take.
Sure.
Let's see what the IRS does. We'll see what it looks like and who they pursue next. 831B elections, is it the NCFCs, any foreign, frankly, any of the passive investment that's offshore. And the dealers were going there for a specific reason, strategically, and it was a sound one at the time.
Sure.
They don't have to be there anymore. And dealers are taking a look now, I think, for the first time, reading that the IRS has brought on 12 new examiner teams. And I think what was lost in that is not 12 new examiners, but teams.
Sure.
And they have one goal, and that's pursuing this offshore when it relates specifically to the 831B. They don't have to do that anymore. They don't have to be there anymore. So we've sought to bring these guys back on shore, put them in a domestic structure that provides all the same feel, all the same advantages, but with some very specific differences. The elimination of all the fees that have historically been acceptable.
Sure.
And they don't have to be anymore. And the other part of that is once you eliminate those fees, we're not telling you how to sell more cars. There's no mystery behind it. They don't have to look at their fee structure and say, okay, what's this, what's this, what's this? It's all there in front of them from a transparency perspective.
Sure.
And they get the benefits, they get better investment income every time. Dealers are saying, I'm offshore, I'm in an island I can't quite pronounce, and I'm getting 1.5%.
Right.
Doesn't make any sense to me. You don't have to do that anymore. And I don't think we're getting the message out enough in our industry to let these dealers know they don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah. Well, one of the things you mentioned that I think has always been tantamount to which structure is chosen is not only the flexibility based on the volume that they do. In your structures, you mentioned a hybrid and your traditional plan. If I'm a large dealer group, I'm exceeding $2.5 million every year in ceded premium. Tell us more about the flexibility of your structures for large and smaller.
That's a great question. So thank you for bringing that up. So one of the things that when we establish these companies, when we're bringing them back onshore, we partnered up with one of the state divisions of insurance that I think understands the reality of the situation with these guys wanting to come back onshore. And frankly, there's some fear in it, again, with what the IRS is looking at every day. And what we've done is when we build these companies, we build them essentially a C Corp. And what that allows us to do is we take a look at our two models, the hybrid and what we call the core. They can effectively be a hybrid dealer, again, based on volume, and if it makes sense for them strategically, on Friday and wake up on Monday and be a core, if the volume goes that way for them. And that's what happens. There are dealers who are happy where they are. I own a store, I own 2, I own 3, here's my volume. This is the most effective structure for me. And we'll help them decide what that is, and they'll know on their own. They'll have attorneys, they'll have accountants, they'll have teams. But what the flexibility allows them to do, if they're in growth mode, and many of them are, they're looking to acquire stores, they're looking at a growth factor that exceeds that 1% year over year, and they say, I want to bring on more stores, we're going to grow in volume. They can switch from a hybrid to a core quite literally overnight. You
mentioned the earlier question related to investment income. While they're in a traditional structure, the investment returns are marginal.
Right.
Give us some perspective on the flexibility of investment structures under your approach.
Sure. I think that a lot of times what happens when a dealer chooses to be with whoever the provider is, whatever the structure is, they hear what they tell them to be in and they say, okay, and that's where they go.
Right.
And they have an expectation of a return that, again, these things are based on the markets, and the markets go up and down. They look for and expect a return that for too many years just hasn't come. And while their growth is a bet on the market, their investment return often is as well. Part of that, I think, I have seen is what you can put in the equities market, just as an example. And traditionally what will happen is when whatever your portfolio looks like, if the percentage is weighted too high in any direction, in the equities market, for example, these investment managers will say, okay, we have to sell out of that position, whether it's up or down, because they don't want the percentage to get too high. Our structures don't require that. What our structures allow are these dealers to be up to 35% in the equities market, and we're not going to force them to sell out of a winning position. And imagine buying, insert stock here, Google stock, Apple stock early, seeing it climb, and having your investment manager tell you you've got to sell it. It doesn't make any sense. We'll never do that, but it's something that's been accepted for the dealers for too many years, and they've seen their returns kind of languish in that 1.5%, 2%. And what we've seen is historically for 15 plus years, our investment advisor, who we recommend, not required of course, but a return annually of 5.2, and that's inclusive of fees.
Sure.
So there are options out there for dealers that they're not aware of today. So I think when you look at what options are available to dealers that they didn't realize, again, we're just not doing a good enough job of educating them. There's greater flexibility in investment vehicles. There's greater return that's available year over year, and it's documented for 15 plus years. They don't have to be offshore in structures that are constantly under. Really, it's the microscope, Mike. It's when am I going to be investigated? What's the IRS going to say next? And there's a stigma to being offshore. They don't have to be there anymore.
Well, one of the things that many of our dealer service professionals see when they go out to engage a prospect, maybe do a reinsurance comparison, many dealer groups are saying, I'm very happy with what I have because they've been that way or in that position or that structure for 10, 12, 15 years. Every year there's a return, there's profitability. We're seeing a change in the 831B law back in 2018. The strategy of having more than one 831B has been testing a lot of those, tax regulation items. Tell us more about why the flexibility of your program allows for someone that may outgrow what would have been an 831B structure. And now instead of putting another 831B structure with partnerships and ownership fragmentation inside a reinsurance structure, tell us why your structure allows a dealer prospect to grow from one type into the other type of program.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, and it comes back to a multitude of things. I think we talk about the dangers inherent, the risk in being offshore now. There's some bad advice that's in the market right now as it relates to 831B and some of these dealers where I heard recently somebody say, well, when it gets to that, we'll just shut it down and start another one.
Right.
There's bad advice. And
sure.
Larger dealer groups are going to have their own team. They're going to have their own accountant team. They're going to have, again, CPA in some case. They're going to have attorneys. They're going to see that and recognize that's a bad deal.
Yeah.
Not every dealer is structured that way. And they'll take the advice that's given to them because there's trust. As you said, I've been in the structure for many years.
Yeah.
They'll take that advice and they'll make a bad decision. What we, I think, focus on is the growth that a dealer can enjoy. And when they get there, the flexibility of the structures allows them to pivot from, again, on a Friday, they're in a hybrid. On Monday, they're core. And it works that way because the growth has allowed them to. It's a dangerous, dangerous game for a dealer to play, to take the advice that says, well, we'll just start another one.
Yeah.
We'll have multiple.
Yeah.
They don't have to do that.
Yeah. No, that's been an argument for professionals that are in reinsurance advisement for many, many years, is that just because you've been in a structure for many, many years doesn't mean it's the right one now. In fact, after 2018, it's surprising to me that many people that have participation reinsurance structures have not made adaptations for that purpose. So I think it's something that at the very least, regardless if you stay in your structure or look at something that ReImagined has, somebody should do a reinsurance check and balance approach here to say, am I in the right structure? Have I outgrown it? Am I at risk? A true risk assessment of where they are. Because, when we enter into reinsurance for a parallel revenue stream to doing what we do in automotive retail, it's a great process. It's absolutely in line with the strategy of maximizing a revenue solution inside a retail automotive institution. One of the things that I think is important that I've heard you talk about here a few times is you talked about fees. Depending on who your provider is, you may have seating fees and premium tax and excise tax. What are some of the other fees, or maybe some of if those are some of the fees, what are the fees you're talking about that maybe go away under your structure?
Yeah, that's a really good question. What we have seen, I think, and dealers have seen it, administrators have seen it, it seems to be a race to the bottom in fees.
Yeah.
And that's really what they're competing on. And I think that's the wrong approach. I think many would agree with me in our space. But what we have built in bringing these structures back onshore, domestic alternative to reinsurance, in essence, if you look at, talk about fees, if you look at an NCFC and they come back onshore, that excise tax goes away. You look at the CFCs, premium tax goes away, seating fee goes away, a dual signature versus a trust account. A trust account required. We don't require that in our structure. We go dual signature, and I think there are really significant advantages to a dual signature account, but that fee goes away. Now, the dealers, I think, for too long have accepted these as the cost of doing business.
Sure.
And as a result, they're seeing their profit, I think, taken from them. In some cases, when you look at savings versus increases in profitability, sustainable or otherwise.
Yes.
So when we look at 2% conservatively, a 2% premium, 2% seating fee, 4%, whatever that number is, you could take a dealer that's 150 or so service contracts a month. If you eliminate those fees over the course of 10 years, you're talking in excess of anywhere between $2, $3, $4 million.
Yeah.
And don't sell another car.
That's right.
Don't increase your PVR. It's just the elimination of fees that aren't required when you redomesticate.
Yes. And, one of the things I'm sure the audience is probably thinking, are the underwriters, are they receptive to this new approach?
That's a really good question. We should bring some in and ask.
Yeah.
I think that there's the pushback or hesitation has only come from some in our industry who have looked at it and said, wait a minute, I have them in this structure now.
Yeah.
I understand that this structure might be better for them,
Right.
but why do I want to move them to it? It eliminates my fees.
Yes.
And some of it's required.
Sure.
Traditional reinsurance, as soon as insurance touches it, those fees come into play.
Yes.
And that's why I think it's important, the structures that we built and to educate the dealers in their existence. They don't have to pay those fees if they change their structure from traditional reinsurance to utilizing risk management the way we do with the partners that we have. Those fees go away. Those fees go away and the dealers see it immediately. It's just math. We talk
Sure.
about kind of simplicity through innovation. It's just math.
And so the innovative or adaptive underwriters, insurers that you are working with, they've seen the both sides of that equation
Yeah.
and said, hey, if this allows us to be more transparent, we're able to still provide an insurance mechanism here
Right.
with all those features you talked about
That's right.
instead of traditional fee structures and traditional insurance costs.
Yeah, and they don't have to be innovative. They
Sure.
don't have to be visionaries, which I think a lot of people in our space look at them and say they could never be. There's some predictability
Yes.
in breakage, I think, in our industry. And these guys can look, some of the partners that we have and our company share some of them, I think they look at it and see a direction that the industry is heading and they want to be part of it.
Yeah.
And they see a way that they can do that and everybody can be profitable. But at the end of the day, I think it's a structure, either one, it's a structure for the dealer.
Right.
The end user in this case is the dealership. And the dealer is going to see an automatic mathematical increase in profitability and revenue over anywhere from 10, again, 5, 7, 10 years up to 20 to 25, depending on their volume and the structure they're in.
So let's talk about a couple of the advantages, because I sit here today thinking about reinsurance of the traditional sense. You've got an onshore position, which is a huge advantage. You've
Right.
got reduced fees, a greater investment strategy, flexibility to grow from one type of participation solution into a larger one. Talk about the products, because I think that's probably the next piece. A dealer's probably saying, okay, can I take this to my administrator? What products can go in this? Because I think that's the next step is, will this be a different type of service contract? Is it only service contracts that can go in here?
Right.
Give them some framework around products that can
Yeah.
be put in this.
I think that dealers have looked at what vehicles can go in, products, as you said, what products can go in traditional reinsurance. And I think there's the requirement to be with the right administrator. The right administrative partner really is paramount in this, because depending on where the dealer is located, what we say is historically true, service contract products.
Sure.
Whatever those may be. Obviously, a extended service contract being the primary product, but tire and wheel and prepaid maintenance and anything that is viewed by the state as a service contract product can go into these structures. And I think it's really critical to pick the right partner. We've had conversations with Axiom for some time about, let's find the state specific that the dealer's in and dive into the regulations. Because
Correct.
again, we pride ourselves on being transparent and trying to help the dealer make the best decisions for them. But if they can put a multitude of products into these structures that, again, it's not traditional reinsurance, but that's how they'll view it, you'll see the profitability will escalate quickly, and it's sustainable over the course of decades. And that doesn't exist. We talked about innovation, and again, we find it to be innovation. It's a simplicity. It's just math. These structures have been in our market, in our industry for decades.
Sure.
For decades. How did the hot product or structure a dealer owned, for example, it's what's in the news now. It's what everybody's pitching now. It is decades old.
Yes.
There's been no innovation, not enough.
Yes.
Not enough. And what we've tried to do is strip out fees, simplify it. Transparency is critical. Pick the right partners. And we can show a dealer, we can sit at and quickly and effectively just do the math. There's no magic bullet. It's the way the structure is created. And we leaned on partners.
Yeah.
We leaned on the right partners, KPMG as tax experts to verify, to look at it, to make sure, okay, this is exactly what you say it is, exactly how you say it'll work. To partner with the right state divisions of insurance and, of course, the right administrative partners has been critical for us.
Yeah. I think one of the things that was attractive as we started to learn more about ReImagined is not only all of the advantages that we've outlined this morning, but also now let's take all of those advantages and then add custom private label products, branding for dealers, that all the things that they seek and search for, partnering with someone that can execute and deliver on customized marketing materials, customized products, go through the lender approval process at each one of their captives.
Absolutely.
And then we talk about technology as an impact, AutoTech effect, digitizing those paper products and giving their customer a modern experience, whether it's through digital product integration using an application, or even the reporting that we've talked about. The idea of utilizing very innovative predictive analytics metrics to tell a dealer not just a static session statement that comes out of an insurance company, but something that's more of a dashboard.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what marrying those types of innovations to this strategy have you seen in the early stages?
I think that they have to go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Okay. These things, when we talk about changes and innovation in our industry, and again, our industry is a slow, big ship to turn.
Sure.
And I think what happens, you see these innovations kind of happening in concert and in partnership. And when we talk about there's transparency for the dealers, how can I see it? Where can I see it? How can I be more in touch with my customers? How quickly can this response and reaction come? And I think that we've seen, I don't think this can be minimized either. We've seen, it's not an aging out, but there's a transition to a new generation. Both
changing of the guard.
Both as dealers, but the employees in dealerships, in the service department. When I'm going to make a claim, who am I going to call? Do I have to use the phone? Am I faxing something?
Sure.
How immediate is my data? When can I see it? The dealers now want to track it, and they want real-time information. And I don't think there's been enough of that now. And it's refreshing for me, who's been in the industry for many years, to see administrators, not enough, but to see certain administrators, to see certain agencies, to see people who are in dealerships every day thinking, I want to bring something to them that's going to make their business run smoother. Because that partnership can last for decades. And I think that's critically important.
I think, the explanation of your platform is very informative. I think one of the things that is even more prolific is this entire company is built around people with a great pedigree in our industry. You guys have been in this industry 20 plus years at the highest level with the biggest brands behind you. You left those brands to form this company because the innovation was so necessary. Yeah. Is that fair?
Yeah, it is. And it's funny, Rob Hare, the guy's, I think, one of the most respected minds in this space.
Sure.
He set out on a quest. He'll tell you it was forever ago, 5-10 years ago. He looked at it. Somebody had asked him, why do I have to be offshore?
Yeah.
There's no way I can do this here. And he kind of set out on a quest, and it was his vision quest. I respect him for doing it, to try to build something in a way that could bring them back on shore. But he didn't think that was enough. And I agree with him.
Sure.
The benefit has to extend beyond, well, you're not in the Turks and Caicos anymore. Now you're here.
Yeah.
There has to be more than that.
Sure.
And we really, I think, have a lot of pride in putting something together that allows them to come back, and the returns, not just the investment income return, but the return in partnership with the right administrators, the right products, the right technology is critical, I think, as well. But to see them react and respond when you show them their own pro forma that changes nothing but the structure, brings them back here and allows them to be tax deferred for 20 years, it's a beautiful thing to see.
Keith, has been very informative. I think dealers and dealer service professionals should learn more about your structure. ReImagined Inc., there'll be a link in the video below. Great. They can learn more about what it is you do and hear this story with a little more finite detail. Mm-hmm. Thank you for coming and participating today. Appreciate having you.
Anytime we can get together and talk the industry, the direction it's going, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.